All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm excited about this one here because this is something a little different. I mean, I know we speak with wrestlers and all over the UK and the world. We even speak with trained professional wrestlers who wrestle in backyards. But this one's different because I really feel like our guest tonight here on Sportswire Radio is somebody you're going to really enjoy because she's got quite a story. She's been a decorated wrestler in the ring. She's been a champion. She's been a general manager even. And now you hear her on the call each and every week in UKW, one of the only weekly shows around in the UK and frankly in the world. And on top of that, she also does a great job with Blackheart Wrestling, where she does ring announcing work. You've seen her in BTW, of course. How can you not forget about BTW? And she's really one of the premier people, one of the premier wrestling minds in all of professional wrestling. So I'm excited about this one. So I'm going to see if my voice can hold up compared to hers when it comes to ring introduction. So we'll find out now here on Sportswire Radio. So without further ado here on the Sports Report, number one level sports show former pro wrestling UKW Women's Champion and Women's Academy Champion. And now ring announcer Shelby Sinar. How you doing, Shelby?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
We'll see how my voice is in about an hour from now. That's kind of the running joke at this point. That's the running. I was actually thinking about this about 25 minutes ago before we went on the air, and my voice was actually not feeling too good today. And I was like, well, how am I going to pull this off? And, well, I just did. So, obviously, here nor there. And I also felt a lot of pressure because you obviously, each and every week, we hear you in so many great places. BTW, UKW, of course. Blackheart Wrestling. So obviously a lot to get into here. And I want to set the tables for us here on Sportswire Radio and UKW. And what's it like in being a part of a show that's a weekly show? It's one of the few weekly shows around in the UK and frankly in the world that you can catch, of course, on YouTube on the UKW page. So for those that are listening and watching this on Sportswire Radio, talk to me on what's it like being a part of a weekly show on UKW.
It is so good. For someone that's been involved in wrestling for so long, it's really refreshing to see something every week, and to see new people coming up as well. We've just started season 2 of Friday Night Showdown. Season 2 started.
And I'm so behind. I got to be honest. I was joking with you off the air. I said I try to catch up with UKW every week, but I get so many requests at this point to come on Sportswire Radio.
Yeah.
I try. I really try. But I do catch the shows from time to time. And I got to say, brilliantly well done.
Thank you. Yeah. So there was 34 episodes last season, which is crazy to think that we shot that many wrestling shows in a year. Never mind the fact that we shot up until then as well. Yeah, no, it's so good to see something every single week and to see new people and to see championships change hands and the crowd slowly getting bigger and bigger. Like UKW have just put in a 3-tiered seating platform as well for extra
That's really
people.
cool, by the way. That's pretty interesting. That's got to almost make the live setup really intriguing. Almost has to make you feel like you're almost more motivated each show, no?
Yeah, and it definitely puts a spotlight on me and Brett that do a pre-show. When there's people sat like eye level across the ring to you, it feels a little bit awkward, but it's great fun, and the crowd in Batley are great as well. So,
is that an adjustment for you now?
Huh?
Is that an adjustment now for you, knowing that the experience is going to be a lot more, I guess, up close and also maybe almost more of a focus on you, whether it's the pre-show, whether it's the show actually that takes place? Does that put maybe more like of a focus on you?
Yeah, I definitely think it does for me and Brett. We're getting to a point now where Brett Hadley is my co-commentator. He's my co-commentator. He was the guy that ring announced UKW before me, so he's been there a long time. And we love Brett. We look up to him a lot. But it definitely puts a magnifying glass on the whole hosting experience of being at UKW, because it is very much it's a live wrestling show, but it's also an event. So we're not just calling wrestling matches and commentating, we're entertaining crowds for 15 minutes while we fix a technical problem and that sort of thing. So
It's interesting you brought that up because I was at a show about 2 weeks ago here in the New York area for a company called House of Glory, well-known company, Amazing Red, yada yada yada, right? And
mhm.
you wouldn't notice it on TV, but there is a break in between matches. You'll see whether it's 4 minutes, 5 minutes, like you said. Sometimes you get a 15-minute intermission where you kind of have a changeover from the first half of the show to the second half of the show. Now, people watching on whether it's on YouTube or anywhere else, they would notice that. But what is that like? Because I noticed it as obviously somebody that covers wrestling and does all different types of things, and I noticed it. But a lot of the average
Mhm.
people wouldn't. Walk me through that 15-minute interval or the intervals in between matches, and what's that like for you and Brett and everybody else that works on these shows?
Sometimes it can be a bit awkward, but most of the time it's just really fun. Brett is so good at being so off the cuff and so conversational that if we have time to fill, which we sometimes do, we have really good conversations and we know a lot about our wrestlers, about our matches. So it's quite easy to get through those. But just recently, just at the start of the season, I made a point of saying to the crowd in Batley that we really appreciate the fact that they bear with us and that they understand that it's being filmed for TV and that we have segment times that the broadcast company need us to stick to. So they're really kind, and we're definitely getting a group of really dedicated fans that keep coming back week after week. So
Oh, no
it's going
question. I
really
mean,
well.
these shows are phenomenally well done, and of course, many friends of Sportswire Radio have been on UKW or a part of UKW each and every week. I think of the wild card Tommy Dillon and Remus
Yeah.
Kane and Leonie Rose, obviously, who we spoke about. A lot of crossovers. So
Mm-hmm.
young Horace as well. So I mean, we'll definitely get into some of those wrestlers here in a few minutes, but. I mean, what's that like? Because I almost feel like in a lot of ways, people don't realize how hard it is to put on a weekly TV show, whether it's the editing, whether it's the people that work on it. I mean, that's a really difficult process. And I don't think people, in a lot of ways, appreciate what you guys all do at UKW to put something out there and to be able to release it to YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
where, again, so many people watch these shows. I mean, walk me through that process and just how it goes from live studio audience to YouTube.
Yeah, so it's a to be fair, it's a pretty big crew for the Friday nights. Like we have um, three cameramen, we have two running cameras, and then a static hard camera and a moving hard camera on the balcony. So there's three camera operators. There's always three people in our technical booth upstairs. There's a guy that runs count. There's a guy that runs our earpieces. There's a guy that runs screens. And there's an incredible like in-house and front of house team as well. So it's definitely so. I'm a musical theatre kid. It's a big. It definitely feels like walking into a theatre, especially the UKW arena that has like curtains now and tiered seating. It
It's
definitely
funny you
feels like
said
you walk
that. It's
into a
funny you
theatre.
said all that because the show I was at, and it was like a student academy show, almost like for our UK listeners, kind of in that transition to where it would be, and you're noticing the curtain, you see the wrestlers, and they're kind of off to the side, but with you guys, it really is like just a phenomenal job everybody does. I
Yeah,
mean, I think that was the thing that I leave aside the wrestlers. Again, phenomenal talent. But what I noticed most was just the overall film work and the editing and the
yeah,
graphics. I mean, that's just phenomenally done. I mean, that does not take 5 minutes to do. Trust me, it
yeah.
doesn't.
So I know a lot of I think most of the editing is done on the night. I think a lot of there is live editing that happens. But Jonathan Sedgwick and the people at iMedia who kind of edit and put everything together do an incredible job. And Jonathan does so much more than people give him credit for, I think. He takes a lot of the work on his own back and runs a pretty tight ship and knows what he wants and how he gets it delivered. So, yeah, it's definitely a lot of credit to Jonathan and the team at UKW because it's a pretty fantastic product that they're managing to pump out every single week. So, it's going
Absolutely.
really well.
No question about that. And of course, if you can follow the UKW's pages on Facebook, YouTube, they're pretty much all over. They have thousands and thousands of followers. And I want to give a shout out to a very good friend who's almost, I guess, adopted me as his nephew. That is Uncle Ralph, of course, Uncle Ralph, the legendary Uncle Ralph of Top Tier and CCW Coloring Championship Wrestling. And how you doing, Uncle Ralph? Obviously, hopefully, I've been a good boy out there lately. Although I'm sure that most may not agree about that. And I thought it was so interesting also on the editing part because obviously I was kind of joking with you off the air for our crack staff, and I noticed that you've actually done some film and editing work.
Yeah.
So I know you personally appreciate what the team at UKW do because you have a background in that.
Yeah, definitely. That's what my college education is in. I'm the creative media student. I did a subsidiary diploma in 2 years, which is normally done in 3. I made a mockumentary on professional wrestling. It's out there on YouTube somewhere. Have a look, see if you can find it. But yeah, I've done music videos, and I made an educational video for a hospital in Wakefield as well. So, and rebranded a brain injury charity as well. So, done a fair bit of media and creative stuff, which is what I love doing really. But now that I'm a mum and life's slowed down, not so much editing happens, but it takes a long time to do. So
I could certainly imagine that. And I almost have to ask you a question, and I wasn't going to ask it. We'll come back to wrestling in a second. But does anybody in UKW ever ask, let's say, like for your advice on different things when it comes to the editing? So I know a lot of people in the locker room ask you about wrestling, but in terms of that, because you have, like I said, a really well-adverse background. I saw some of you work with some music videos. You mentioned a few different things I got to see as well. And do you ever get asked sort of maybe about some of those different things and just, your thoughts and maybe how things get done? Because I thought that'd be so interesting to ask you.
Not really on editing. Like I said to you, like it's incredible that you've done that research because not many people know that I am creative and do media and that sort of thing. But I've done camera work for UKW. Like when I say that I've done all the jobs, like definitely film shows and being a hard cam person and taking pictures and that sort of thing. And my husband is on live editing as well. He knows a thing or two as well.
Sure.
So not advice, but I've definitely helped out and stepped in when the crew's been away or when they needed an extra person.
That's definitely important stuff there. And obviously, yes, we did do our research on it because, listen, I was joking with you and I said, well, I listened to the one interview you did before. And on top of it, I'm like, listen, I got to go in there and make sure this is Shelby Sinar. She's one of the premier people in not just women's wrestling, but all of wrestling. I got to make sure that I have my A game on it. It's like talking to you is like when I talk with Disciple or Tommy Dillon, where they've got a long list of accomplishments and a long list of those things. And we'll get to some of those here in a little while. But I mean, I did want to come back to UKW because obviously the Persian Empire, I mean, they have been running things. They have been almost like the bloodline of UKW wrestling. And you knock them down, but you can't permanently knock them down. And I was almost kind of wanted to ask you this question because I know Tommy and I kind of touched upon the Persian Empire briefly when we had them on a few months back, but I really didn't get a chance to touch upon them. But why have they been one of the premier groups in all of professional wrestling, not even just in the UK, but all of wrestling? I mean, why have they been so dominant?
I wish I could tell you. Like, I wish I had an answer for that question. Mustafa Khan, I think, in himself is a man to be reckoned with. Like, he has always been a powerhouse at UKW. He's always been heading for the top titles, and he's been an absolute freight train running through everybody. But then when Big Duncan kind of came along and attached himself to Mustafa, it was like, oh, what's happening here? And then the other 3 kind of banded on, and Joe Cedric kind of turned and joined. I think it's just the fact that they've covered all the bases. There's not really one area of a type of wrestler that they don't have. Like, they've got Big Duncan and they've got Mustafa, who are the big guys and who are the muscle that can take people like Henry Winter and Jepson down. And then they've got Joe Cedric, who is the mid-card, and Johan, who is your mid-card, and your tag team champion, obviously, who was tag champs with Duncan for a while. Leonie Rose, who was head of the women's division for quite a while, who isn't anymore, thank goodness. But yeah, who was head of the women's division for I think she was the person that came in and she came into UKW just as I was leaving, wrestling, that is. So we never really crossed paths, but we'll see what happens. If she keeps pushing buttons and she keeps annoying people, there's going to have to be someone that puts her in her place, right?
You said something interesting, and automatically now we're going to get into your career in a second because I know you mentioned on the stream, and obviously I got a chance to watch some of your in-ring work, and no question, phenomenal talent, and you've obviously got a long list of accomplishments. I'll get to them. But when you said that, it almost reminded me of, Shelby, a few years back when we saw kind of that dream match with Trish Stratus and Charlotte Flair, where it was Trish and Charlotte, where they kind of quite didn't cross paths. I mean, Trish was still able to where she could, no question, have a great match, and obviously, but there was still, their generations didn't quite match up. I think it's almost in a sense kind of similar here with you and Leonie, because you guys didn't quite, your dominant run obviously was before Leonie's. I mean, is that almost like a fair comparison in a sense, where I kind of see it where what you've accomplished and obviously what Leonie's is almost kind of similar right now to a Charlotte Flair and a Trish Stratus, where we saw that dream match a few years back at SummerSlam?
I'd definitely say it's a fair comparison. I think I was around UKW for a really long time and was the only female there for a while that trained and that called it home. And now Leonie is that, to be honest, and got to give her credit where it's due. Like, she has kept that women's division running, but someone did that before her. And I'm the reason that she's there, but there is a women's division because I kept it running. So there has to be a crossover at some point. And I think, I just think that there has to be someone who can kind of take her back to a place where she's respectful and where she actually means what she means. She actually is women's wrestling for UK wrestling and is respectful and truly shows that women's wrestling is just as important as men's.
I think it, no question, and I think it definitely is important now. And it's so interesting that you spoke about that, the fact that it wasn't even that long ago where you thought about women's wrestling, and it was almost like an afterthought. I mean, I remember even as a kid, really before Trish Stratus and Lita and China, obviously, God rest her soul, where women's wrestling was almost, you didn't even know it existed. You didn't even have a women's champion in the WWF for years. WCW never really had a women's champion yet. In a lot of ways, and that's why I made that comparison to a Trish Stratus, for example, because if you think about what you did in the middle part of the last decade up until about maybe 3 or 4 years ago, where before your career ended, where you made the transition, you were in main events. You were a general manager. You were a champion. I mean, you were like right there. I mean, what was that like, and kind of setting the trail for where we are today, where I see women's wrestlers from all over, whether it's Tonga or Alexis Falcon, certainly a Leonie Rose, different types of wrestlers that I've covered here on Sportswire Radio. And I mean, what was that like when you were basically setting that trail to where we are kind of now in the UK wrestling scene? Walk me through that.
I loved wrestling. Like, it was such a passion for me, and it was something that took me a really long time to get comfortable with. I think only when I kind of found the plus size princess character did I say, you know,
I listened to your theme song today, by the way, as well.
Yeah,
I did. I thought it was. I liked it a lot. I mean, listen, I listen to music all the time. I mean, I really, I thought it kind of set the mood of your character at that time, I have to say.
Yeah, but it was definitely the turning point of kind of using the fact that I'm plus size and using the fact that people call me fat to my advantage. And I think a highlight of my career for me was we did a gauntlet match at UK Wrestling. I don't know if you've managed to see it quite a few years ago now, but there were five other women in that match, and it was men. I believe it was main event. There were 5 other women, 6 women in total. Absolutely putting on, for me, it was an incredible match, like a match of my career, I would definitely say. Credit to the other 5 incredible women that were in there. And I think only now can Leonie go on to do incredible matches, and can Sarah and the other women that are coming up through the UK Wrestling Academy do such incredible things, not just because of me, but the women that came before me, like Kirsty Love, who's come back again at the minute, and was there before me, and someone that I looked up to at WrestleBration 3. It was the first time I ever went to WrestleBration. Saw people like Shana, who was such an inspiration, and for me to see women in the ring that kind of resembled me and resembled what I wanted to do, set a fire under my ass. And I think I'd love to be that person who does it for everyone else as well. So I would like to think that I do that, but I don't know if I have managed to. We'll see.
Let me ask you this question as we're here on Sportswire Radio with really one of the premier minds in all of professional wrestling. That is Shelby Sinar. And of course, Shelby's pretty much done literally every single thing humanly possible in a wrestling ring. Literally almost every single thing humanly possible. And it is a
Not done
tremendous.
ladders. Not done
All right.
tables, not done stairs.
I was
Everything
what I
else.
was what I
Everything
was
else.
trying to say was you've done work as a wrestler, you've done work as a commentator, you've done ring announcing, you've also done stuff. You know a little bit about the editing side, you know about the film side, you know about pretty much in terms of working with the wrestlers and helping them train. That was kind of my point in the general broader things here, but we are very honored to have her here. I am the host of the Sports Report and the station manager here of Sportswire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryson. And I wanted to go back to that because obviously I did catch the main event. Was able to catch, and obviously I did kind of hear you referenced it in a couple of different things in the past. And walk me through that moment. Did you know at that moment that was going to be a big deal and being in the main event? And I mean, was that, or was it kind of like, okay, you were in the moment and didn't really know the significance of it? I mean, walk me through that moment, that match, and kind of the circumstances, and if you thought at that time it would be a big deal to where years later. I mean, I've seen stuff. The LWF a few months back, they used one of their shows, and that was the main event. Who crowned the women's champion? I mean, you see it now, and you mentioned Leonie Rose. She's actually wrestling in Nonstop Action Wrestling this weekend against Disciple. I mean, so now it's almost like it's second nature. It's certainly come a long way. Did you know at that moment years ago that it was going to lead to where we are?
I don't know. I really didn't. Like, I was just doing what I wanted to do and what my ego made me do.
Okay.
I think definitely when I was wrestling, it was all about me, and I was the baddest, the biggest, the toughest to get through. And so at the time, putting on that match and knowing that there could potentially be 5 other women that I have to get through to keep hold of my title, then that's what I was going to do. But not ever did I stop and go, this could be a huge moment for me, until there was one moment 3 people in where I was out with 2 of my collective pals. I had Henry Winter and I had Andrew Jepson with me, and there was a moment where I was tired and I definitely needed like just a minute to breathe, and my boys kind of said, do you need a second? I was like, yeah, give me a second. And they paused and caused a bit of a distraction for me, and only then did I get a chance to go, this is cool. Like, what is happening right now is important, and I have to get through this, even though I don't have much energy left. So not ever did I look back and did I look forward. I don't ever think I kind of projected forward. I definitely look back on it now with really fond memories and can see kind of ripples of my career kind of bringing themselves back up in other people's directions, and I can kind of see where people are going. I think with me being I love being in the UKW locker room, and I love chatting to people and kind of guiding people through. I can definitely see where pitfalls might happen and kind of just nudge people back on track. Yeah.
It's interesting you bring up UKW in the locker room, because I was speaking with a wrestler that's been on Sportswire Radio, but I won't name the wrestler. And he was kind of talking to me and explaining to me about UKW. And he talked about the locker room and how there's kind of like different tiers, right? There's your veterans, you're kind of, I guess, sort of younger wrestlers but have some experience. Then you have your completely newer talent, let's say as a young Horace as an example, or some other people that have crossed paths in UKW. Then you would fall into obviously somebody with some of the most experience out there. Not quite Mustafa Khan's experience, because Mustafa Khan, I mean, he's been doing it, we won't even say. But the point,
he was main eventing when I started, so
he's been at it for listen, he's been at right. But the point is that, do you ever feel like that wrestlers come to you for advice, or maybe you do kind of see like in some ways you're like a locker room leader in that sense? I know you're not still wrestling as much as you did or at all compared to 4 or 5 years ago when you were basically dominating and running roughshod over things, but do you ever feel like that wrestlers maybe come to you for advice and ask you questions on different things? That's something that and do you like giving advice?
Yeah, I think it's a natural thing for me is, to me speaking as just Shelby, like I'm definitely like a leader. Like I've always been a mum. I've always been
I
the
did hear
mum
you say
friend.
that. I was like, wow, okay, I did hear
Yeah.
you say that on an interview.
I've always been like the mum friend. So like leading in, kind of just advising people and watching matches for people I think is really important, and being present as a fan as well. So like when I go to shows, friends of mine have said that I'm the worst person to go watch a wrestling show with because I react like I've never seen wrestling before in my life. Um, which obviously I haven't ever watched wrestling. No, I'm joking.
I wouldn't know.
But
I
yeah,
wouldn't know.
no. But I love it, and it's something that I'm really passionate about, and I want to put out a good product for people. I think if there's anything I can do to advise people or to kind of add a little show business to something, then that's kind of what I want to do. But yeah, I don't want to give too much away, but I do take notes during shows, and there are people that do come up to me and kind of ask what I thought and if there's anything they could do. And so yeah, I'm definitely a mum of UKW, I think, which I'm only 24, but I'm definitely a
I
mum.
was gonna say, I mean, you're not like 40-something years old. I'd say, wow, okay. I mean, listen, all right, I could see it. You've been through all these different life experiences, and I could see why. Okay, you know what? That's why you'd want to have a mom like. But you're 24. I would listen. I would never ask a woman an age, but I would know one thing: you're very young. I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
you've had so much success in relatively a short lifespan here, and I have to get into a funny comment here from somebody I'm sure you pretty much know, and if I say his name, you'll definitely know him. But
Yeah.
his name might be
Oh, here we
Andrew
go.
Jepson. You might have heard of him, right? You might have heard of Andrew Jepson, and
Yeah.
he had a funny line here. And she's the worst to sit next to, but the best to have to sit watching your matches. I guess that kind of
Yeah.
sums up what you just said, maybe.
Yeah, definitely. Like I definitely am like I haven't seen wrestling before, and I really get angry at people who are wrestlers that go and sit and watch a wrestling show and just sit like this the whole time.
You would have hate. Well, I got to tell you, you would have hated me
I hate
because when
it so bad.
I was watching. So I was at this House of Glory show, and one of the wrestlers on the card happened to be a friend of mine, and he was a trainer. He came on the air. A friend of mine, Anthony Finkel, listens to us all the time religiously, and he's one of my closest friends for ages. He was reacting like you, right? And he would say to me, "Well, why aren't you saying anything? Why aren't you doing anything?" And I, in my head, was observing the show, kind of like trying to absorb all of it in to take it in. So I wasn't making any like jumping up and down or going, yes, 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 whatever it might be, because I was like what you just said, those wrestlers would be kind of just
Yeah.
taking it all in and trying to see who I could speak with, who I might know. And I didn't do that at all. So you would have hated watching a wrestling show with me. You would have been like, what's the matter with
We
me?
would
What's
have
wrong
not
with
been friends.
Right, because I was watching it kind of almost to be analytical, and maybe
Yeah.
that's what some wrestlers do, watch it analytically. I mean, Bret Hart was an example of it, where he would basically watch the match analytically, he would talk about it, and you, on the other hand, were watching it as if like there was no tomorrow. I mean,
Yeah.
so what do you say to a wrestler then who would be like what I just explained, or even somebody like myself? What do you tell them to kind of watch it differently?
Yeah.
Is there
I think so for me, commentary's become really hard. Like when I was added as a permanent fixture, to the commentary team, like before I would just ring announce and then disappear, but now that I'm commentating and ring announcing at the same time, it's quite hard. And there's definitely shows where I maybe say like 3 sentences because I'm sat actually trying to watch to be able to talk at the same time. But I think from yeah, so my husband is this is my husband.
I'm aware. Trust me, I'm aware. Trust me,
Yeah.
I'm aware.
Not you, Jepson.
Oh, okay.
We are married in real life. So he's terrible. Like he will sit and just kind of watch, and he has this face where he just does this.
That's
Like,
what. Listen,
for
that
the
was
whole
me.
show.
That whole show for 3 hours. I watched the
I'm
show,
so
and
annoyed.
my friends. It was 2 other guys, and they were like,
Yeah.
"Well, why aren't you saying anything?" No, I'm trying to absorb it to kind of like,
Yeah.
like what you just described.
But what I say to him is that you should watch matches like you would want a crowd to watch yours. So if your job as a wrestler at the end of the day is to get the crowd to like you or to hate you, and if you're not reacting, then you're not a good wrestling fan. That's kind of my initial thought, I think.
Okay.
Or even as a wrestler, I'd say, not for anyone who just comes and walks into a show that's never seen wrestling before. Obviously, they've never seen it, they don't know what's happening. But for someone who has years of experience and knows exactly what a crowd should be doing and can give crowds a little every now and again, I think it would be good for wrestling.
All right. Well, those are reasons why you also want to like Shelby's page on Facebook, Shelby_Sinar. Make sure you like her page because I'm telling you, she's definitely, like I said before, and I said at the top, she's one of the premier minds in all of professional wrestling. She definitely proved it. And again, I mean, she's done so much in such a short amount of time, and you were amazing in commentary, which I would definitely agree. And I was going to ask as a follow up. I mean, walk me through that transition then, going from wrestler to commentating, and then we'll get to the ring announcing in a second. But I mean, what was that like? That adjustment? I mean, I got to think that because speaking with you have so much enthusiasm and you have so much that you want to give out there in the ring. But I mean, walk me through that adjustment.
Really hard. I think COVID was a really good adjustment for me. So, I stopped wrestling 2019 because we got married in August of not August. He will kill me. July of 2019. So I stopped wrestling a couple of months before that because I've been doing it since I was 13 and done quite a bit of damage to my back and my neck and my knees and so I needed a break, and then COVID happened, and then we came back to live shows and to weekly regular shows, and it was like, okay, this is my permanent job now. Like, I can't get back in the ring. Like, I'd had a child during COVID, and my body has changed and whatever else, but it was hard to sit and watch things happen in the ring, where if I was a wrestler, I would get involved. I wouldn't even have a question of being like, this is not right, don't do this. My character would have been like, no, this is not happening. But Shelby Sinar, the commentator, has to sit and smile and occasionally swear at people. But yeah, it's definitely been a huge adjustment from fighting and making a point physically to kind of being very eloquent and trying to talk for a living, which is hard.
Trust me, I do it almost every single day on Sportzwire. Not that I'm making a living off it, but in terms of speaking with people, and it can definitely be very difficult and challenging. But you said something interesting that I wanted to go back to before we come back to some present day things here with you and some other companies I want to get into. Obviously, Blackheart and a little bit on BTW. But I mean, you talked about starting at 13. You almost remind me of a wrestler I've had on a bunch of times, 2-Bit, where 2-Bit started him at a very young. I think he started about 15 or 16. He was formerly doing the sessions over good friends over in KOW or in Barrow. But I mean, 13 starting out and wanting to be a wrestler. I mean, that's pretty ballsy, I have to say. Pretty much like, I mean, I remember 13 liking wrestling, and my parents would have said, and I'm from Brooklyn, New York. People would have said, they would have laughed at me. So you want to be a wrestler, but you were like 13 and said, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to train. And I mean, what was that like? I mean, start at such an early age to be a pro wrestler and obviously becoming the wrestler that you were.
Yeah. So I didn't really watch a lot of wrestling. Like, I watched TNT. So TNT was on.
Yep, I know TNT.
TNA, sorry, not TNT.
Okay.
TNA was on Freeview TV in England at the time, and Jeff Hardy was a big thing back then. And,
yep.
On TNA. So, and I'm one of a lot of kids, and I have 3 brothers, so 2 older and 1 younger brother. We were all quite close together in age. And I did dancing, I did majorettes, I did horse riding, all the casual girly hobbies, and we used to go and watch UKW shows in a warehouse down a hill, a walk away from our house, every first weekend of the month. And I was like, I could do that. I can do that. And went and started training. It took me 6 months to learn how to forward roll. I got there, and then 10 years later, I'm still hooked on it, and you kind of get a feeling for professional wrestling and can't walk away very easily. And so I always find a way back, but it was hard at 13. I definitely took a lot of stick at school. Like, I'm definitely a bigger, like I said, I'm plus size. I'm a big girl. Like, I already stuck out like a sore thumb. And for me to start telling people, I'm a wrestler, was like another thing for people to be like, yeah, whatever. And then I got into one fight at school, and people were like, oh, okay.
I wouldn't want to fight you, though. I mean, let's be honest. I wouldn't want to
Yeah.
fight somebody like you because something tells me that you definitely would have did a lot of the beating up. But I have a bunch of comments in here, so let me get to some of those comments because I could ask you questions all day, but nobody wants to hear that. They want to get involved, and obviously, some people want to get involved. And I think this is what's on the minds of certain people, and you kind of touched upon it. And I know this individual who knows somebody related to an individual that I know, and I want to pass the message on for this individual who might know an individual that came on last week that we will reschedule that individual for next week. But be that as it may, this individual tells me Shelby Sinar versus Leonie Rose 2023.
Yeah, I'm not saying yes. I'm not saying no. We'll see what happens.
Okay.
I'd like to get my hands on her. I think if it wasn't kind of in my contract as a commentator to not really get involved, I think I would have done something by now. But got to hold myself back and speak to management and speak to said person and kind of figure out when I'm going to do something about it, because I definitely am going to do something about it.
And I do want to give a shout out also to a guy you might know. His name is JPR, and he says living legend. And I got to ask you them very quickly before I get to some other comments in here, and I'll come back to him. Walk me through that moment when JPR wins the UKW championship. He wins it on a roll up, and it was almost like people were like, "Huh?" And it was like one of those moments. I mean, walk me through that moment because you were there live and saw it up hand. And what was that like?
It was the loudest moment UK wrestling that I can remember, and I've been there 11 years. Like, it was crazy. I kind of said on commentary this last week on season 2 episode 1 that for me it was the moment that I felt like a pop star. You know, when you watch those videos of like people singing in their concerts and they stop singing and they listen to the crowd. There was a moment where I was announcing JPR as the new UK wrestling champion, and I went, "Say it with me," and I did the J, and then they did the PR, and it was like, oh, this is so cool. Like, for me, that made my night. I can't imagine how JPR felt. But it was so good, and the fact that he did it like basically one-legged was incredible as well. So incredibly well done to you, JPR. Definitely deserved it, and I'm sad to see that you didn't keep hold of it, but yeah, it'll be back.
Kind of reminded me of it in a way when Lance Rivera had won the championship in Wrestle Island. He was champion, and then all of a sudden, next thing you know, he wasn't the champion. But hey, listen, as they say, you were a champion. You can't take that away. It's in the record books that you were a world champion. Very few people can say that they're a world champion, and certainly Shelby is one of those. Obviously, JPR is another, and I kind of got a same comment from Mr. Los there, but when will you step back in the ring? Which I think was kind of asked already, so I kind of feel like that's already been asked. I do have another good question.
Get in the ring every time as a championship match, but I don't wrestle.
And I have a good one here. Your debut was in Grapple, was that correct?
Yes, weirdly enough, my first in-ring wrestling debut was at Grapple Wrestling. Yeah, throwback. They're no longer in operation, but they wrestled out of Leeds. So when UKW used to do Academy versus Academy shows, and we did a UKW versus Grapple show, and I got chatting to the promoter there, and a week or so later he messaged and was like, "I'm doing a 3-on-3 mixed gender match. Do you want to come and do it?" And I was maybe like 6, 7, 8 months in. And I was like, yes, let's do it. So I put together like a pair of ripped jeans and like a flannel shirt, and did a really, really fun match with some people that not easily forgotten about. It was really fun. So that's, again, good research, Dan. Like, yeah, Grapple Wrestling was the first time I got in a ring.
I was actually going to ask that, but it's sort of a more formal way. But I appreciate that, Dan, asking one less question that I didn't have to ask. And I want to put this question on the screen because it's somebody I know from our friends over at CCW. And although I know where you've worked for, but for those that may be hearing you the first time, what companies did you wrestle for?
Did I wrestle for? UK Wrestling, Grapple Wrestling, KNS Wrestling, TNT Wrestling.
TNT, I know, obviously.
Is a slightly different TNT to the one I think you know about.
Okay.
Who else back in the day? Me trying to figure them out. quite a few. GTM. I wrestled for GTM a couple of times.
I
That was
wasn't going
really
to bring
fun.
them up.
No, but we did a really fun show at Bridge Community Church in Leeds, which has like a
Okay.
really beautiful rainbow-colored like lighting sort of thing. I had my last actual in-ring match was at a TNT show, not a
Okay.
TNT, a GTM show, and that was really, really fun. So yeah.
Well, I will tell you one place I don't think I saw you in, because I noticed that when you were wrestling, Mr. Bibby, Steve Bibby was on the call in UKW at one point. That's the LWF, and of course, Mr. Bibby, that's his baby. We do a lot of work with the LWF, and I
Yeah.
noticed that would be one company I know that you didn't do much, if any, work for.
No, I never got to wrestle for LWF. I've met a lot of the guys that I've wrestled. Gina
Yep.
Starr, who wrestled for LWF. I've got in the ring with her a couple of times, but I never wrestled for them. I would have loved to have done that, but we'll see. Maybe in a couple of years.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's
what
kind of
happens.
people. It's all trickling in here, and Shelby to redebut season 3. Boy, you're really getting teased tonight on this. I have to say, we were speaking about this off the air, and I was like, well, how do I basically formulate that? I should have probably never even had to worry about it, because I always get comments all the time with these things. It's almost like it's already like we've walked right into it. So there's no question that people definitely have that on the minds, and they want to see it. But listen, never say never, as they always say. So something tells me stay tuned. Now, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to say follow Shelby Sinar on Facebook, also UKW Wrestling. Follow them on YouTube, Facebook. Really one of the premier wrestling companies around. Again, one of the few companies all around the world that has a weekly show. You think about it, just in the world, not just in the UK, but you think about America, you think about Mexico, Japan, Canada, all of the places that have wrestling. This is really one of the few, I would say maybe 10 companies out there, if that have a weekly show, and they're one of them. I mean, so that shows you the work that the entire company puts in there. And please make sure that you follow them here. And I did also want to ask, because speaking of the LWF, there's a lot of crossover in a company you do some stuff for, BTW. And BTW, again, very, very, very interesting company. And again, Rarebit's the champion there. And I thought Bentley was going to get it. And I have to break it here, because Bentley is coming back to Sportswire Radio next Thursday. And obviously, Bentley's become a friend. He's become one of my favorites. I always say it's him and RP Davis that are almost like the two guys I think about it that almost come across in the UK wrestling scene almost identically. Obviously, a little bit different in terms of how their personas are, but very similar. But I mean, Rarebit's the champion, and it seems like I don't know who's going to break his run here. And I mean, talk to me about BTW, because that's a company, like I said, we do a lot of work with from time to time. Really enjoy the company. Lucas Jackson obviously was on the show here months back, and I've had Mr. Getsky and Mr. Stone on there, and Eitan Steens, who's been here with us. He was in BTW wrestling. I mean, there's a lot of crossover with Sportswire and BTW from our friends over in the LWF. And I got to ask you about being a part of BTW and that company.
Yeah, BTW is incredible. I think so. I've run announced for them once. I did the last show, and I am booked as well to do Slam and Trace, which is later on this month, which I'm very excited about. BTW again is one of those really professionally put together shows. Like, they have an incredible crew of people that do so many incredible jobs. I didn't have a thing to worry about when I walked in, and needed everybody's ring information and needed everyone to tell me when my cues were and when my lights were and my microphone. Really, really slick, really, really well run, and a great family show. The shows that I've been to watch. As a wrestling wife, I get to sit and watch a lot of wrestling shows, and they've been incredibly put together, and they've sold out, and they've had a really great crowd in with t-shirts, and really dedicated fans. So
it's a very nice, really nice setup there. The commentary is excellent. The overall talent that they have there is a really solid roster, and it's just a company that I have to say really, really enjoy. I think they put on shows every quarterly. I think it's a quarterly, almost about, and just do a really, really great job. They really, really enjoy everything that kind of BTW brings to the table. So
I believe they've just had their year anniversary as well.
They've
just been.
I saw that on Facebook. I think was it Facebook. I think it was posted.
Yeah. So they were happy 1 year to BTW.
And hopefully many, many more. And we're looking forward to Bentley coming back to Sportswire Radio next week. And I got to give a shout out to somebody else that's going to be coming on here very, very soon that is with us. And you probably know him because he was a huge part of things over in Blackheart Wrestling this past Sunday. And also, he is one half of the now new tag team champions in UKW. That is the Playtime Mafia. This is Mr. J. Rowe Lewis. And he says definitely check out UKW. And while I'm here with J. Rowe on the screen, I mean, talk to me about the Playtime Mafia and their success.
They, at UK Wrestling, they have just captured the UK Wrestling Tag Team Championships. They are incredibly well deserved. They're a team that have been really long established. They've been together for a while, and they've been wrestling together for a really long time and put on incredible matches. And J-Ro has just become the second ever Grand Slam champion at UK Wrestling. He's been around a really long time.
He's been a world champion. He's been around the clock champion.
He's done everything.
I mean, this guy's done it all.
He's done tags. He's done TV. He's done heavyweight. He's done round the clock. J-Ro, let me know if I'm missing one, but every title.
Well, I'll be sure. I'm sure next week when we speak with him, I'm sure we'll be listing the accomplishments. So don't feel too bad. Don't feel too bad.
Yeah.
And what was it like then watching him in Blackheart this past week? Because we spoke a little bit about it yesterday with Champ Rogers, and obviously we saw the Playtime Mafia in action against the Super Buds. I was reminded the name is the Super Buds between Champ Rogers and Supersonic Sammy Blue. I mean, walk me through that match and what was that like? Because I'm going to be speaking, I'm sure, a lot about it next week.
Yeah, it's almost like I have an earpiece in that I've just been reminded that J-Ro also had the Academy belt at UKW. But there
you go. There you go.
The change in attitude at Blackheart Wrestling really shocks me for the Playtime Mafia. He's just really angry. There must be something in the water over at Blackheart that they're just not. They're feeding him something that really kind of gets under my skin and really annoys me. Kind of throws back to the whole jester days of J-Ro Lewis and being really creepy and really dodgy to win. Whereas he's proved that he can do that he can win without cheating at UK Wrestling. So I don't fully understand the switch at Blackheart, but there must be some people that are getting under his nerves. And if that's Champ Rogers and Sammy Blue, then I feel sorry for them.
Oh, I definitely would. But you know what? I mean, there might be something to what J-Ro's going through, because when I asked Tommy Dillon this question, and I see him in Nonstop Action Wrestling, I see him in UKW, then I see him in some other companies, and he's totally different. And it could just be maybe it's the people at the Geisley Theater. Is it maybe the fact that Blackheart Wrestling has some, I don't know, newer talent, and maybe J-Ro feels like that they shouldn't be in his ring? Because there is a point that you know it. You've been an accomplished wrestler. You've been a champion. You've been a main eventer. You do know that there are something to that. I mean, do you think maybe it's because, well, I don't know. I mean, maybe some of those younger wrestlers maybe are inferior to a J-Ro and Cerebral Steve?
I definitely think there's that territorial line of don't step in my ring if you've kind of not the place to be here, which is worrying. But from a wrestler's point of view, I totally get it. Like, keep out of my circle or things are going to go south for you. And I mean, J-Ro's just proven that he can do that, right? Cerebral Steve is incredible and is powerful, and it will definitely hurt you with his legs. Like, they're not nice to watch. I've struggled with a couple of Cerebral Steve matches because they're that brutal. But yeah, I don't fully understand, but I'm sure they'll make it clear to us in the next couple of weeks.
Oh, I have a very, very good feeling that they will be. And I certainly am very, very excited to be speaking with J-Ro here, just as I'm excited to be speaking with here for a little while longer. That is our very good friend, Shelby Sinar. And I got to thank Shelby for wanting to come on here, because I hadn't thought about it, but then I was like, you know what? I did notice that Shelby had been on our streams quite a bit. Then it kind of hit me. You know what? Maybe I should ask her to come on, because I always get asked this, and some of my friends out here in New York that watch the shows on Facebook, they always say, you know, Tom, when you speak with a woman and a woman's wrestler and their perspective, I really enjoy those more. So I'm glad that we're able to do that, because I do get requests sometimes from people to kind of do different things. So Shelby's definitely got more experience than probably like 3/4 of the wrestlers that we've had on here in Sportswire Radio. So at the end of the day, we're definitely learning a lot here, but we're having a great time here. But let me get to a couple of comments in here. And also, Andrew reminds us here, BTW 1 year in August. So thank you for that, Andrew. And obviously, great stuff. And something tells me we'll get Andrew on here one of these days. Because at this point, I get requests from everybody all over the world. So, but I got a good question here. Enough about me. What are some highlights from the season 2 premiere of Showdown? That's a great question.
I think getting my piece in to Leonie Rose was pretty cool. Actually, I definitely had to have a few words with management after the show. They weren't particularly happy that I got up and said what I said, but being able to say something was definitely a release for me. It's just such a good product. I don't think I could pick, excuse me, I don't think I could pick like an exact couple of moments out, but there was so commentary. I'm quite quiet because Brett is incredible, but
he's phenomenal. I mean, he's phenomenal. He's phenomenal.
The moment where you'll hear me scream when after J.Ro Lewis had a singles match, there appeared some people on the balcony, which you can't quite see their faces, and they were lit in really red lighting, and I didn't see them leave. I didn't see them come in. And like I said, I'm a big musical theatre fan. I had to have Brett say to me, like, they are not real, like they are really there. This isn't like a Phantom of the Opera moment where you're like freaking out. Like there were genuinely people there, and that was weird and creepy and something that hopefully we'll see a bit clearer in the next couple of weeks, or I'm going to be having nightmares. But yeah, it seems that there are new people coming into UK wrestling, which will be really cool to see.
Well, that's always good.
Also scary, Disney.
It's scary, but it's always good to see because you want to see things differently. You want to see some new things, and obviously there's reasons why. Again, you need to be going over to UKW. And speaking of UKW, I have to mention it because obviously, unfortunately, we were going to have him on. Well, we kind of had him on, and unfortunately, his internet and certain technical difficulties happened. And that was our very good friend, Young Horace, who's become a favorite of ours on Sportswire Radio. And I know you were a part of things there at Wrestlebration. And I did want to ask you before I get to some other thoughts about your career and closing thoughts on where we go forward with you. But what was that like to see him finally win his first match?
That was a really cool moment. I think I commented on the stream that I kind of wanted to see him. I wanted to see him take his mask off. Like the masked wrestlers that come into UKW, they come in masked and they leave masked. Like we genuinely don't get to see who they are. So, it's intriguing for me to kind of be like, oh, let me see under the mask. But I'll tell you what, it wasn't as exciting as seeing was. I know that the episode's not out yet because management are away. But spoiler alert, if you don't want to know, then kind of walk away. I believe that Young Horace is now the number one contender for the Genesis Wrestling Championship. He won that 3-way match on Friday, meaning that he is 2 for 34, which is slight weird numbers, but 2 in a row in less than 7 days, which now makes him number one contender for a title. So he's in pretty well.
I'll tell you what, I guess that might be a segue next week. Stay tuned. But obviously, I know there are people that watch on Sportswire Radio and people watch and listen left and right. So I won't go too further into that because I'm also always a believer, Shelby, and to let it happen organically. Let it happen. Never pry. I always tell wrestlers all the time. There are certain wrestlers I speak with, and they say, "Oh, do you want to know what's going on?" I said, tell it to us as it happens. I don't want to be a Dave Meltzer. I don't want to be a brown nose. I want it to come organic because everybody's happy. Everybody's on the same page. Everybody feels comfortable. So if it happens, great. If it doesn't happen, we'll still speak with Young Horace anyway, and stay tuned for that. But these are reasons why, again, you need to be following UKW. You need to be following Shelby. I can't stress this enough. Shelby_Sinar. She's really done it all here. She's really somebody that you can just see her enthusiasm. You know, you think about Sportswire Radio and all the wrestlers we speak with, she's got maybe as much enthusiasm for professional wrestling as anybody I've seen, and it's really inspiring. And I did want to ask you then, obviously doing ring announcing, and what's that like? And I always have to ask in terms of just keeping your voice, and how do you keep a voice going? Because I was watching when I was at the House of Glory show, and I'm watching the guy doing the ring introduction, and I see even the people that are on to the side, and you see them, and I'm always wondering, well, I mean, how do you keep your voice straight for all those 2 or 3 hours? I mean, what's that like?
Yeah, WrestleMania was a slog. I think it was really hard to get through that show, but like I mentioned a couple of times, like I'm a musical theatre nerd. I'm musical theatre trained for singing, so
Okay.
I warm up a lot. I kind of
Okay.
steam when I'm at home, which to look after my throat because I love to sing. So, yeah. Luckily I just tend to have a very loud voice, so I can kind of cope if we have mics go down. But it's a lot of like just making sure that I stay healthy and don't drink milk and don't eat chocolate and that sort of thing before a show. But
What
yeah,
What do
wrestle
you
break.
like
So
to
I
say?
woke up.
Go ahead, jump in.
Going.
No, you jump in. Go ahead.
I woke up the day after WrestleMania and had church in the afternoon, and I was like, I don't think I could talk today. Like, I think I was leading the day after, and I was like, oh, this is not going to go well. We'll see if I have any
Wow.
sort of voice this afternoon. But yeah, that was pretty funny.
What do you like to sing?
Musical theatre. So I love Hairspray. I'm a big Hairspray fan. Come From Away. Put me on the spot now. I love Ben Platt. I don't know if Ben Platt is he's big in America, I think. Yeah, and worship. I'm a worship singer as well. So
I'll tell you what, you got to have a lot of musical talent to do worship music or even musical theater, because I took drama in high school for 3 years, and unfortunately, I really wasn't that good at it. I really, unfortunately,
yeah,
maybe if I would have took it now, 10, 15 years later, I would have probably been much, much more interested in it. But at that time, I just didn't have the, I guess the mindset and frame of mind. But I know that to be a singer and especially to sing that is certainly quality music, quality talent. So there's no question that I'm not going to have a sing off with you. I mean, maybe Jenny Hayes over at Nonstop Action Wrestling, but
yeah.
we'll
Jenny's
certainly
good.
see. Yeah, Jenny's a great singer, but I have a feeling that you could hold the tune also.
I always said that Tracy Turnblad from Hairspray was my dream role, and then figured out that I couldn't dance. So I was like, oh, that's never going to happen.
Well, if it makes you feel better, I have 2 left feet. So I literally have 2
Yeah.
left feet. So if it makes you feel any better, let your hearts not be troubled. But I did want to ask you, obviously, because I've talked a lot about UKW, I've talked about Blackheart, I've talked about some of the talent over in BTW, but I wanted to ask you on a personal feat, what did it mean to you to be the UKW Women's Champion?
It meant a lot. Like, and it was so I won at WrestleMania 9. So I'd have been wrestling for 6 years. And my 2 younger sisters were there, the show that I won. So I believe I'm getting an in-ear message. But I won in front of my 2 younger sisters, and they were so proud of me. And yeah, there was a really special moment of a picture of my sisters kind of seeing me win. And yeah, it meant a lot for me to kind of, women's wrestling was still coming up then, and was still kind of being seen as a toilet break and something that wasn't necessarily equal to male wrestling. So for that to be such a big moment on one of the biggest shows of the year for UK wrestling was really cool. And again, the management that put me in that position and that helped me get there, I am ever grateful for, and I love them for everything that they've done. And that person in particular, I love every moment of everything that you did for me. So thank you very much. You know who you are. Oh, great.
I had to ask you also because you were a general manager. I mean, what was it like playing the general manager role? Because I thought that was actually one of the more cooler things you've done in your career. Because
Yeah.
I know titles are great, I know main events, but I would always kind of think being like that authority role. I always think like of Mick Foley or Shawn Michaels when he was a commissioner, or Roddy Piper even years and years back. Just a whole list of people. Kurt Angle, general manager. But I mean, what was that like playing the role of a general manager?
So the same UKW management person put me into the general manager role, which was because the original collective at the time had disbanded, and I was at the top of the pyramid and needed somewhere to go and couldn't kind of fall back to the bottom. And going into UKWW management was the next step for me, and it was so much fun. Just getting to mess with people without actually getting any repercussions was pretty fun to do as a bad guy at the time. But it's so good to be able to mold and to work with people and to better their careers. And like I said, the guy that kind of put me where I was then, to be able to be that person for someone else was was really fun.
Oh, no question about that. I'm sure that's definitely certainly things that you're surely going to think about for a long time. But I also wanted to ask you this question, and I'm sure you probably get asked this a lot, or maybe you feel that way. Do you ever feel like that you were an inspiration to younger women or women that were getting into wrestling, and all the barriers that you've broke and the achievements that you've had? Do you ever feel like in some ways you've inspired younger women's wrestlers?
Um, I I don't know if it was if it was just women for me. Like I think there's even I think for me it was the plus size kind of
Okay.
community that I kind of spoke up for. So being able to kind of get in the ring as a 20, 22 stone woman and a 24 dress size, and wear lycra every weekend and stand up for body positivity and kind of be um, not giving a crap about what people thought of me was inspirational. I think I would like to say that I am, but I would never say, "Oh, I inspired you to do that," because I don't want to be that person. But there have definitely been a couple of people that have come to me and said, "Thank you for doing what you do, and thank you for kind of being that person for my daughter to say, actually, if she can do it, then I can do it." I'm more than happy to be that person for people.
No, I still think it's an important question to ask, because I said this again. I've said this a couple different, because I've had different people come when I've also interviewed women's boxers. So I mean, I've done different things. We've done a lot of women's basketball here on Sportswire Radio in the past. So we try to give everybody a shot. And I've always said that I do feel that in some ways, especially when it comes to professional wrestling, with women's wrestling, I still think it's come a long way, even
Yeah,
just in the last 7 or 8 years. I mean, obviously WrestleMania, we saw main events a couple different times, whether it's the first shows last year, this year, whether it's obviously WrestleMania 35 before COVID in 2019. I mean, attrition leader years back on Raw. So I definitely think that there is a lot that women's wrestling has evolved and come a long way. And I think that obviously you are in some ways a part of that, especially here in the UK. Because if you do think about our scene here and you think about some of the involvement and the changes, I brought up people like Tonga. I brought about people like Alexis Falcon. I know you've been in the ring
yeah,
with an Alexis
yeah,
Falcon. Those wrestlers are main events. I mean, I remember, listen, Rick Marcus telling me 2 years ago, he said, "I want you to watch two wrestlers." And I said, "Okay, sure." And he told me the two wrestlers were Alexis Falcon and Tonga. And Alexis
yeah,
Falcon and Tonga, I mean, they've just blazed trails, and they've done some of the things that you've done here. But I did want to ask you before I get to closing thoughts and some other things. Obviously, I know you're a very busy person. You're getting ready for obviously Friday's show and some other things, and I know you've had a lot of moments in the world of professional wrestling. But if there were one or two moments that stand out most in your career in wrestling, what would they be?
So the two that I've already mentioned, I think winning the belt at WrestleBration and the Gauntlet match were two incredible moments. I think um, the first time we stood in the ring as the collective was a pretty special moment as well. Like those were four men and me that were really close as friends and could kind of do what we thought was best for the company at the time. Um, Wrestling in churches was really inspirational for me. I think one of the best things I think I've already mentioned. I'm married to Andrew Jepson. I defended his belt for him when he couldn't wrestle one time, which resulted in me getting injured. Luckily enough, funnily enough. But that was really cool to be able to share a wrestling ring with my husband and some of my best friends was um, really cool and really inspirational. And to see, there was one time when the plus size princess became a thing. There was a little girl in the crowd, maybe 7, 8, who'd cried after I'd lost like a pretty big match, and I kind of went over to her and hugged her, and I think gave her one of my tiaras and was like, "This is for you." And I think just connecting with people and building respect and unity is really important. And I think, like, because you mentioned Alexis and Tonga, I just want to mention as well about the speaking out movement and
Yep.
that happened a couple of years ago. Like those two
Hmm.
were instigators in that, and
I
definitely
think right
fought
around
for
COVID, right? That happened right around COVID,
yeah,
just about.
definitely fought for women through that. And like I said, I've been involved with wrestling 11 years. Like a lot of things happened to me, and I happened to a lot of female wrestlers. So those women for me are inspirational and are people who I'll forever be grateful for making wrestling a safer place for women and continuing to make wrestling a safer place for women. If that's something I can continue to do, then that's something I definitely want to do, and we'll strive to make wrestling safer and better and more fun for everyone involved, not just the men.
Absolutely. No, listen, I mean, at this point to me, I look at women's wrestling and I see that there are several women's wrestlers that could be not just great women's wrestlers, but great wrestlers altogether. And I was watching the House of Glory show, and this is speaking off it. I mean, I was watching some of the women that were in the ring, and I didn't know a lot of these wrestlers because they were just basically academy talent. Almost think of them like up and coming wrestlers, and they had phenomenal ring abilities. I mean, they were doing moves in the ring that I couldn't imagine anybody else doing. So I think it's obviously tremendous what these individuals do, and obviously what you did. And I had to ask you before I get to closing because you did bring up Andrew Jepson. I have to ask you, what is it like watching and commentating on his matches? I have to say, I know it's one thing. You guys are married, but I mean, everybody talks about Triple H and Stephanie, and that's one thing. Everybody talks about you've seen different situations with wrestlers being married. I mean, for a while, The Undertaker had Sarah. That was obviously way back before Michelle McCool, and obviously saw for a while Kurt Angle and Karen Angle became Karen Jarrett. But I mean, you're commentating on your husband's matches. I mean, what's that like? I mean, does he ask you, hey, say a good word for me? Or hey, maybe not say a good word for me? I mean, I have to ask almost, what's that like?
I'm almost more brutal towards him than I am anyone else. Like, I'm really picky about things, and I think back when I was wrestling, like, I definitely poached a fair few moves off Andrew Jepson. I think I'm the definitely move poaching wife who steals follow-away slams and veil tosses, which he constantly reminds me that they're his moves and they're not my moves. But yeah, I'm definitely more critical, and I'm a bit obviously more squeamish. Like, it's hard to watch. So Jepson is 6'4".
I know he's a big. I've watched him in the ring. He's a big man. He's a big man.
He's upwards of 20 stone, and he does I'd also steal his music. Sorry, Jeps. He occasionally does a move off the second to top rope that really freaks me out, and he knows that I don't like it, but he throws it in every now and again just to scare me. But he's never got injured to date, touch wood. So
he's ribbing you.
Yeah. But it's so much fun, and to do that with my husband is really cool. We've been married 3 years this year, and
well, congratulations. Yeah. Okay. I hope it's to the next 300 years. So I certainly congratulate you guys, and obviously congratulate him on all of his success. And anytime he wants to come on, well, listen, anytime on Sportswire Radio, he wants to come on and share the war stories, we definitely be happy to have him on here. And there's no question that I've seen some of his work in UKW, whether Henry Winter obviously came to mind, and JPR. So obviously a whole different number of things he's done. And obviously we're welcome to have him anytime here on Sportswire Radio. And obviously, before I get to close out, I want to ask you this last question. What do you want to say to anybody that watches UKW, or let's say BTW or Blackheart Wrestling, or anybody that might be interested in watching those shows or going to those events? What would you want to say to any of those people as to why either they should continue to follow, or maybe after hearing this, come and join the fun like we all do here on Sportswire Radio?
I would say that if you're up for watching some incredible people do some incredible things, and my husband always says it's like soap opera in spandex. Come and see professional wrestling. It's so much fun, and it's the best thing you could do for under a $5 on a Saturday night, especially with the current situation. I mean, UK wrestling is the pound entry, and there's some incredible shows coming up for Blackheart Wrestling on the 21st of this month. They're doing their first charity show.
Yep, I saw that.
For Chubby Lad That Runs, who's raising money for motor neuron disease, I believe is the right charity. He's raised like two grand already. He needs to raise $3.5 grand before he runs the London Marathon in October. There's so many incredible causes that are happening, and they're going on. Professional wrestling is getting bigger and better, especially in West Yorkshire. We're doing an incredible job in Yorkshire, but Blackheart Wrestling is definitely, like J-Ro says, the place to be at the minute for those big shows. But UK Wrestling every week, £1 a ticket. Come and see us on a Friday night. Nothing better you can do on a Friday night than come and see us, come and chat to us. We're not big scary humans, most of us. But yeah, it's definitely worth coming and seeing.
Absolutely. And of course, on YouTube, if you're like me from New York, the other side of the pond, check out all the great content. Blackheart Wrestling, another great company. Again, so many wrestlers I speak with, whether it's the lawman Kyle Kennedy, Mr. Sportzwire, who's reminded me he's 5-0. I'm sure you've heard about Kyle Kennedy being 5-0, being undefeated. He loves Blackheart Wrestling. Gung Ho Muttley, I got to give a shout out to Gung Ho Muttley. Champ Rogers, obviously, we had on last week. Supersonic Sammy Blue. Remus King, I mean, Robert DeCaro, we've seen them obviously in UKW. They tell me all the time about how much they love Blackheart Wrestling. And in BTW, last thing, I would love to see Davey Getzke get his butt kicked. For whatever reason, Davey Getzke, I've had him on so many times. For whatever reason, if he's watching, I certainly am kind of pulling for Reynaldo to keep the LWF title. But most importantly, I hope that he gets his comings in BTW. And I'm very excited about the future of Bentley in BTW and where he goes from here after not coming up and getting that title against Rabbit. But these are all great things here. Shelby Sinar, please follow her. All the great things that she does in the world of professional wrestling. She is a trailblazer. She is an inspiration. She is a voice for many, and she's got a great voice to begin with. So I'm going to give you the floor. Any closing thoughts? Anything else you want to plug, share, say? And the floor is yours. And fire away, my friend.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you so much for having me. Definitely, you can catch me on social media. Shelby Sinar, the ring announcer, on Facebook. Like I said, I've been around wrestling for 11 years, and it's never been as good as it is now. So this is like UK Wrestling, Blackheart Wrestling, Bolton Town Wrestling, GT Ministries, all the incredibly good places that are happening, not just in West Yorkshire, but all over England right now. Make sure that you come and see us. Like, it's such a, like, I honestly cannot say, like, when you get bitten by professional wrestling bug, whether that's a fan or a wrestler, it won't go away, and you don't need a vaccine. So come and see professional wrestling. It's an incredible thing to do, and we hope to see you, if you can get down to the Peggy Tub on the 21st of August for that charity show for Blackheart Wrestling, and help us raise $3,500 for an incredibly good cause and a really cool guy that's running the London Marathon. So yeah, thank you so much for having me, Tom. It's been really fun.
Absolutely. We'll definitely do it again. And obviously, again, UKW coming up here on their YouTube page, UK Wrestling, where you can see all the great shows. I mean, live content like no other company. And tell us the app, where the app is.
The app is UK Wrestling. That's at any good app store. I'm just looking it up on my phone here. This one right
very
here.
Simple. So that I'm gonna actually do that I'm gonna do the plugging for you. So if you have an iPhone or an Android, or you have anything else in between, all you have to do, because we all have it, a thing called App Store. You put in a search for UK Wrestling, UKW. It'll definitely come up. You can have it on your app. 1, 2, 3. And in fact, I should probably download the app, because I'll probably watch it much more on my phone, because I watch everything on my phone these days. So make sure you check all that out. And Shelby, it has been a tremendous honor. Looking forward to UKW, seeing you on commentary. Looking forward to BTW. Looking forward to Blackheart. And it has been a tremendous honor to have you. Congratulations on all of your success. Congratulations on the future success. I can't wait to have you on, and I'm looking forward to speaking with you again soon.
Thank you so much.
As we're here on the Sports Report, the #1 global sports show with pro wrestling champion, commentator, and announcer from UKW, that is Shelby Sinar, who you can follow on Facebook, Shelby_Sinar, or Shelby Sinar ring announcer. She does a phenomenal job for so many companies. Make sure you follow her. We will be back coming up here this Thursday on Sportswire Radio with somebody who hasn't been on here in a while. That is the unforgettable Andre Decker from Odyssey Pro Wrestling. Also, KOW does some work in Paramount, and we're going to get him right after his victory last week at Odyssey Pro Wrestling's Mutiny against Big Guns Joe. So a lot to speak about with the unforgettable Andre Decker. It's been a hot skip in a minute since we've had him on, so that'll be 8 o'clock British Standard Time. Looking forward to it. Hopefully he's not in too much of a foul mood, because every time he speaks with me, he's always a little upset, but we'll see. We finally get him on in a good mood after a victory, so I'm excited. That'll be 8 p.m. British Standard Time. That'll be live on Sportswire Radio with the unforgettable Andre Decker. But in the meantime, if you're on sportnarium.com/player, you'll go back to your regularly scheduled programming. And if you're on Facebook here, we'll be back 8 o'clock tomorrow, Thursday, with Andre Decker. Tomorrow, 9 o'clock Eastern Time, we'll be with the guys from Wrestling Championship Entertainment. Thank you so much. I am the host of the Sports Report, the station manager here of Sportswire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryce.